I'm sitting in my car right now in the driveway of this house I don't recognize anymore, and I can't make myself go inside. The winter cold has fogged up the windows, and I'm staring at nothing, my hands gripping the steering wheel like it's the only thing keeping me anchored. 23 years. That's how long I've been married to Robert, and I'm 45 years old, and I just now realized I have no idea who he is. You know what I never thought I'd share? This moment. But I need to tell someone, because if even one person hears this and recognizes themselves in my story, maybe they won't waste another minute the way I did. So I'm asking you to listen, really listen, and if this helps you or someone you know, please hit that like button and subscribe. This needs to reach people who are living this right now, people sitting in their own parked cars, afraid to go inside. It started on our honeymoon. God, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. We had planned this trip for months, this beautiful getaway to the Caribbean, just the two of us. I had the brochures spread out on the kitchen table for weeks, glossy images of turquoise water and white sand beaches. I'd imagined myself in a sundress, walking hand in hand with Robert along the shore. I'd even bought a new swimsuit, something I never did because money was always tight. I was wearing my soft pink bathrobe that morning before we left, the one I loved so much, worn thin at the elbows from years of use. I was thinking about how this was the beginning of everything we were building together. The coffee was percolating in my old aluminum pot, filling the basement apartment with that familiar smell, and I was actually happy. I remember humming while I packed, folding my clothes carefully, making sure I had everything we'd need. Then Robert came home and said his mother was coming with us. Just like that. No question, no discussion. He walked in carrying her suitcase, already packed, already decided. I stood there with my hands full of sunscreen and paperback novels, and I felt the floor tilt under my feet. And when I said something about it, when I tried to explain that this was supposed to be our honeymoon, our special time together, he looked at me like I was selfish, like I was asking for something unreasonable. And he said those words that would echo in my head for the next 2 decades. You know she comes first, right? I should have gotten back in that car then and driven away. I know that now. Our basement apartment in Memphis had these small windows that barely let any light in, and the concrete floors stayed cool even in summer, cold in winter. We lived in this quiet cul-de-sac where families had lived for generations, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew everyone's business. I'd moved there with such hope, thinking we'd build something beautiful together. Instead, I just kept going down those basement stairs, deeper and deeper into a life I didn't recognize. Here's the thing about manipulation. It doesn't come at you like a punch. It comes like fog. You don't notice you can't see until you're completely lost. His mother needed him. His sister needed financial help. His brother had problems at work, and they all needed me to understand that family came before me, that my needs were less important, that my dreams were selfish. And I believed them. I convinced myself they actually needed me, that I was the strong one, the stable one, the one holding everything together. I remember sitting in that old rocking chair in our living room, the one that creaked with every movement, and I'd rock back and forth, trying to calm myself down after another day of being invisible. The chair became my refuge, my witness to all those nights I sat there alone while Robert was upstairs with his mother, solving her problems, attending to her needs, making sure she came first. My dignity just eroded, like concrete wearing away in the winter cold. Slowly, so slowly, I didn't even notice until there was almost nothing left. I gave up so much. I used to play dominoes with friends from church every Thursday night. We'd laugh until our stomachs hurt. We'd talk about our dreams and our struggles, and I felt seen. But there was always something that needed doing. Robert's mother needed a ride to the doctor. His sister needed me to watch her kids. His brother needed help moving furniture. Every single Thursday something came up, until eventually my friends stopped calling. They assumed I'd stopped wanting to come, and maybe part of me had, because saying no had become impossible. I accepted every insult wrapped in concern. "You're getting older," his mother would say, looking at my face like she was examining spoiled fruit. "That dress doesn't really suit you anymore. You've put on weight, haven't you? Robert could have done better, you know, but he's loyal." I swallowed it all. I went down into our basement apartment with those cool concrete floors and small windows that barely let any light in, and I told myself this was love. This was family. This was what I was supposed to do. The coffee percolating in my old aluminum pot became the soundtrack of my mornings. Same pot, same routine. Same cold basement, same feeling of being invisible. I'd stand there in my soft pink bathrobe, worn thin at the elbows, waiting for the coffee to finish, and I'd touch the small cross necklace I wore every single day. I held on to my faith like a life raft, told myself God wanted me to be patient and obedient. That suffering was holy. That sacrifice made me righteous. I even dreamed sometimes about that Porsche Cayenne in ocean blue that I'd see driving through our neighborhood. Some wealthy family from the newer development would cruise through, and I'd watch it pass, and I'd imagine myself behind that wheel, driving somewhere, anywhere, away from here. But I never let myself really imagine it for long. That felt too selfish, too ungrateful. I gave them everything. When Robert's mother needed money for her house repairs, I drained my savings account, the one I'd been building since before we got married. $12,000 gone in an afternoon. When his sister's business was failing, I co-signed on a loan, putting my credit on the line. When his brother got in trouble with some bad investments, I worked overtime for 6 months to help cover his losses. They never said thank you. They just expected more. And I kept giving because I believed they needed me. I convinced myself that without me, this whole family would fall apart. That I was essential. That my worth was tied to how much I could endure, how much I could sacrifice, how small I could make myself so they could take up more space. But the truth was darker than that. The truth was, I needed them to need me. Because if they didn't need me, then who was I? What was my purpose? I had become so dependent on being depended on that I'd lost any sense of myself outside of their demands. The winter kept me inside that basement apartment even more. The windows would fog up from the warmth of the radiator, fighting against the cold outside, and I'd wipe them clean just to see out, just to remember there was a world beyond these walls. But every time I looked, all I saw was that quiet cul-de-sac, those families who'd lived there for generations, all of them seemingly happy, all of them seemingly together in ways I'd never be. I remember one particular morning, standing at the window with my coffee, still in my bathrobe, and I saw a woman about my age getting into a car with her husband. They were laughing about something. He opened her door. They drove away together, and I felt this ache so deep I thought it might split me open. Because that was supposed to be me. That was supposed to be us. Instead, I was in a basement, alone, waiting to be told what was needed from me next. The food I made became another language of my invisibility. I'd spend hours cooking, real Memphis soul food, the kind that takes time and care. And I'd set the table upstairs in the main house where Robert's mother lived. She'd criticize every dish, too salty, not enough seasoning. Your grandmother made it better. Robert would eat in silence, never defending me, never acknowledging the work. And I'd take my plate back down to the basement and eat alone at the small table by the window, watching the fog creep across the glass. That rocking chair witnessed it all. Every night I'd sit there and rock, and the creaking became my lullaby, my prayer, my scream that nobody heard. Back and forth, back and forth. Like I was trying to rock myself into a different life, a different story, a different ending. But here's what I'm learning now, looking back at all of it. I wasn't just being used. I was participating in my own erasure. I was choosing to believe their version of reality because the alternative was too terrifying. The alternative meant admitting I'd wasted years. It meant being alone. It meant starting over at an age when everyone tells you your best years are behind you. So I stayed, and they knew I would. That's the thing about people who manipulate you. They understand your psychology better than you do. They know exactly which buttons to push, which fears to exploit, which hopes to dangle just out of reach. Then last month, everything changed. A woman named Miss Patricia showed up at my door. She was a social worker, there to do a routine check-in because a concerned neighbor had called about what she was witnessing. I didn't even know someone had been watching, had been seeing through the facade I'd worked so hard to maintain. Miss Patricia came down into my basement apartment, and she sat across from me at that small table where I ate my meals alone. She looked around at the cool concrete floors, the small windows, the rocking chair that had molded itself to the shape of my grief. And she just watched me. She watched how my shoulders curved inward, watched how I flinched when I heard Robert's footsteps upstairs, watched me pour her coffee with trembling hands. I tried to explain it all away, tried to tell her everything was fine. That's what I'd been doing for years, wasn't it? Explaining away the pain, rationalizing the mistreatment, making excuses for people who'd never once made an excuse for me. I was so practiced at it. The words came out smooth and rehearsed, like I'd been preparing for this interrogation my whole life. But Miss Patricia didn't buy it. She sat there in my basement, in that winter cold that never quite left, no matter how high I turned the heat. And she said something that stopped me. She said, "I want you to do something for me. I want you to stand in front of that mirror and look at yourself while I stand beside you. Really look, and tell me what you see." I didn't want to. God, I didn't want to. Because I knew what I'd see. I'd been avoiding mirrors for years, catching only glimpses, never the full picture. But something in her voice made me do it. Maybe it was the kindness. Maybe it was the fact that she was the first person in decades who'd asked me to see myself, really see myself. So I stood up and walked to the mirror hanging by the door. That cheap mirror I'd hung there years ago when we first moved in. Miss Patricia stood beside me, and I forced myself to look. I saw a woman I didn't recognize, hollowed out, apologetic for existing. My eyes had this dead quality, like I'd stopped expecting anything good to happen. My shoulders were permanently hunched, as if I was always bracing for the next blow. My mouth had forgotten how to smile without it looking like an apology. Even my soft pink bathrobe, worn thin at the elbows, seemed like a metaphor for everything I'd become, threadbare and faded and used up. And I started crying in a way I hadn't cried since I was young, before any of this, before the marriage, before the basement apartment, before the belief that I was nothing without them to need me. I cried like something inside me had finally broken open, and all the years of swallowed grief came pouring out. Miss Patricia let me cry. She didn't try to stop me or comfort me or make it better. She just stood there, bearing witness, and somehow that was exactly what I needed. Someone to see me, really see me. Not the version of me that Robert's family had created, not the version I'd been performing for decades, but the actual me underneath all the layers of submission and sacrifice. When I finally stopped crying, she said, "I think there are some things you need to know, and I think you need help finding them out." That's when everything started unraveling. Miss Patricia helped me hire an accountant, a woman named Sarah who specialized in financial abuse cases. I didn't even know that was a thing, financial abuse. I thought abuse was only physical, only the kind that left marks you could photograph. But Sarah explained to me that what had been happening was textbook financial exploitation, and she could help me trace it. What we found made my hands shake so badly I could barely hold the papers she showed me. Money gone from accounts I'd thought were ours. Accounts I didn't know existed, opened in my name, maxed out and abandoned. Loans I'd supposedly signed for but had no memory of signing. Credit cards with my name on them, statements going to addresses I'd never lived at. My entire financial life had been hijacked, orchestrated, bled dry. Sarah laid it all out on her desk, and I sat there in her office, and I felt like I was watching my life from outside my body. $12,000 from my savings. Yes, I knew about that. But there was more, so much more. Robert had been taking money from my paycheck for years, small amounts I'd never noticed. depositing them to an account under his mother's name. His sister had used my credit to finance her failed business, leaving me with $30,000 in debt I knew nothing about. His brother had forged my signature on a loan application, and when he defaulted, the collection agencies came after me. It was a conspiracy. That's the only word for it. A coordinated, multi-year conspiracy to drain me of every resource I had while keeping me believing I was the one being supported, the one being taken care of. Sarah pulled up bank statements going back 15 years. She showed me the pattern, how the money always moved in one direction, away from me, into their accounts, into their pockets, into their lives. She showed me how they'd timed it perfectly, taking small amounts when they could, larger amounts when they thought I wouldn't notice, covering their tracks with fake receipts and manufactured emergencies. They did this together, Sarah said, her voice gentle but firm. This wasn't random. This wasn't accidental. They planned this. I sat in that old rocking chair that night, the one that creaked with every movement, and I rocked back and forth, trying to process what I'd learned. The coffee pot percolated on the counter, the same aluminum pot I'd been using for years, and the smell that used to comfort me now made me nauseous. Everything familiar had become evidence of my own blindness. I thought about all those times Robert had told me we couldn't afford something I wanted. A new coat, a weekend trip, a simple dinner out. Meanwhile, his mother was driving around in a car I'd helped pay for. His sister was living in a house my debt had helped finance. His brother was taking vacations on money he'd stolen from me. I touched my cross necklace, the one I never took off, and I wondered if God was ashamed of me. If faith was supposed to make you strong or just make you stupid. If there was a difference between grace and being a doormat. The winter outside felt appropriate. The cold, the darkness, the way the windows fogged up and made the world disappear. That's what my life had become. A fog I couldn't see through, where everything familiar had been obscured by the condensation of my own tears. But something was different now. I wasn't just sad anymore. I was angry. And anger, I was learning, could be fuel. I decided to confront them. But not the way they'd expect. Not quietly, not privately, not in a way that could be contained or explained away. I was going to hijack the one moment they cared about more than anything else, Robert's promotion dinner. He'd been working toward this promotion for 3 years. Senior management position, significant raise, corner office. His mother had already bought a new dress for the celebration. His sister had told everyone on social media about her brilliant brother's success. This was their moment, their victory lap, their proof that they were the good people, the successful family, the ones who had it all together. I wasn't going to let them have it. The dinner was at an upscale restaurant downtown, one of those places with white tablecloths and waiters who pour wine like it's a religious ceremony. Robert's boss was there, 3 of his colleagues, his mother at the head of the table like a queen holding court, his sister and brother flanking her like loyal subjects. I sat at the other end, where I always sat, in my place of insignificance. They were toasting Robert's success, talking about his leadership skills and his dedication and his bright future. His mother was beaming, soaking up reflected glory. His sister was laughing too loud at the boss's jokes. His brother was already calculating what he could ask for now that Robert would be making more money. And I just stood up. Everyone stopped talking. Robert looked at me with this expression of confused irritation, like I was a child acting out at an inappropriate moment. His mother's eyes narrowed. The boss looked politely interested. "I need to say something," I said. My voice was shaking, but I kept going. "I need to tell the truth about how this success was built." "Honey, this isn't the time," Robert said, his voice tight with warning. But I ignored him. I looked at his boss, at his colleagues, at these strangers who thought they knew the man they were celebrating. And I told them everything. About the stolen money, the forged signatures, the coordinated conspiracy, about the accounts drained, the debt accumulated in my name, the 15 years of financial abuse that had funded their comfortable lives. About the basement apartment with the small windows where I'd been hidden away while they lived in the main house. About the honeymoon where his mother came first. I had brought the documents. Sarah had helped me prepare a folder, clean and organized, with highlighted sections and sticky notes marking the most damning evidence. I pulled it out of my purse and placed it on the table, right next to Robert's celebratory champagne. "This is what his success cost," I said. "This is the price I paid. This is the fortune he built on my back while telling me I was the one being supported." The silence was absolute. Robert's face went from red to white to red again. His mother started to say something, but the boss held up his hand. "Is this true?" he asked Robert. Robert tried to explain, tried to minimize, tried to turn it around on me. Said I was confused, that I was having some kind of breakdown, that I didn't understand finances. But I kept standing there, and Sarah's documents kept sitting there, and the truth kept sitting there between us like a bomb nobody could defuse. His colleagues started looking at each other. The boss's expression changed from celebratory to concerned to disgusted. Someone asked to see the documents. I handed them over. Robert's mother stood up, her voice shrill. "She's lying. She's always been dramatic. She's jealous of Robert's success." But his sister's face told a different story. She'd gone pale, knowing her name was in those documents too. His brother had already started edging toward the exit. The boss looked at Robert for a long moment. Then he said, "We're going to need to discuss this. Privately. Tomorrow morning." The promotion dinner ended there. No more toasts, no more celebration. Just uncomfortable silence and whispered conversations and the sound of my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. I walked out of that restaurant, and I didn't look back. Not at Robert calling my name. Not at his mother's furious face. Not at the wreckage I'd just created. I walked out into the winter cold, and I breathed, really breathed, for what felt like the first time in decades. That night, I ate dinner in the living room for the first time ever. Not in the basement, not alone at the kitchen table, but upstairs in the main living area, in front of the television, sitting on the couch like a person who had every right to be comfortable. It was such a small act, but it felt revolutionary. I'd made myself a simple meal, nothing fancy, and I ate it slowly, tasting every bite, feeling my body remember what it was like to nourish myself without guilt. The next morning, Robert tried to come home, but I'd changed the locks. His mother called 17 times. I didn't answer. His sister sent me a long text message about how I destroyed the family, how I was selfish and vindictive and going to hell. I blocked her number. The church found out, of course. In a neighborhood where families had lived for generations, gossip spread like winter frost. And just like I'd feared, just like I'd known would happen, they sided with Robert. I was the one breaking up a marriage. I was the one causing drama. I was the one who should have handled it privately, who should have been more forgiving, who should have remembered that family comes first. The pastor called to counsel me about forgiveness and reconciliation. I told him about the money, about the abuse, about the basement apartment. He said marriage was sacred, that vows were forever, that I needed to think about what kind of example I was setting. I hung up on him. Neighbors stopped talking to me. Women I'd known for years crossed the street when they saw me coming. The family who'd lived next door for 3 generations suddenly had nothing to say. Even the one neighbor who'd called Miss Patricia in the first place, who'd seen what was happening, stopped making eye contact. I was shunned. That's the word for it. Shunned by the church, shunned by the community, shunned by everyone who'd rather preserve the appearance of a happy family than deal with the ugly truth underneath. But here's what happened in that isolation. Here's what I didn't expect. I found myself. Miss Patricia helped me apply to a senior community on the other side of Memphis, one of those places with activities and programs and people my age who actually wanted to be social. I didn't think they'd accept me. I was only 45, technically too young, but they made an exception based on my circumstances. Within 2 weeks, I'd moved out of that basement apartment with its cool concrete floors and small windows and into a bright 1-bedroom unit with a balcony and a view of a garden. The first morning I woke up there, I sat on that balcony with my coffee, still using my old aluminum pot, because some things are worth keeping, and I watched the sun come up. Really watched it. Not through fog on a basement window, not while worrying about who needed what from me, but just watched it, present and quiet and mine. My health transformed almost immediately. The dark circles under my eyes that I'd had for years started to fade. My shoulders straightened. I started walking in the mornings around the community, and people would say hello, and they didn't want anything from me except maybe pleasant conversation. I started sleeping through the night without nightmares. My appetite came back. I put on healthy weight, not the stress weight I'd been carrying, but actual muscle and strength. The community had a dominoes group. I hadn't played in over 20 years, since those Thursday nights with my church friends that had disappeared one emergency at a time. But I went to the game night, and I sat down at a table with 3 women I'd never met, and we played. And I remembered. I remembered how to laugh until my stomach hurt. I remembered how to talk about dreams and struggles without apologizing for taking up space. I remembered who I used to be before I became invisible. One of the women, Maria, told me about her own escape from an abusive marriage. Another woman, Jean, talked about the years she'd spent taking care of aging parents who never appreciated her. The third woman, Dorothy, shared her story of financial exploitation by her own children. And I realized I wasn't alone. I'd thought I was the only one, the weak one, the stupid one who'd let this happen. But abuse is everywhere. It's hiding in plain sight in every neighborhood, every church, every family that looks perfect from the outside. I brought the rocking chair from the basement apartment to my new place. That creaking chair that had witnessed everything. But instead of it being a shrine to my suffering, it became something different. I sat in it in my new living room, and I'd rock back and forth. But now I was rocking myself into a new story, a different ending, a better life. The winter started to feel different too. Instead of keeping me trapped, it became a season of rest, of reflection, of allowing things to die so new things could grow. I'd sit on my balcony even in the cold, wrapped in a new coat I'd bought myself, a warm one in deep purple, not pink, not apologetic, and I'd watch the world go by. Robert tried to visit. I refused to see him. He sent letters. I returned them unopened. His mother showed up at the community once, demanding to talk to me, and security escorted her out. They were losing control, and they couldn't stand it. For 23 years, they'd had complete access to me, to my resources, to my emotional labor. And now they had nothing. His sister declared bankruptcy. Apparently, without my credit to lean on, her business collapsed completely. His brother got sued by other people he'd defrauded. Robert's promotion fell through after an internal investigation revealed some creative accounting practices that mirrored what he'd done to me. His mother had to sell her house because she couldn't afford the payments without my money propping her up. I didn't feel victorious about any of it. I just felt tired. Tired of being angry, tired of being sad, tired of giving them any more of my energy, even my resentment. But then came the second twist. After all of this, after everything had settled, Robert published an essay online. A long, detailed essay about his difficult wife who'd abandoned him during his time of need, who'd made false accusations to destroy his career, who'd chosen bitterness over forgiveness. He painted himself as the victim of a vindictive woman having a midlife crisis. He shared it publicly, tagged mutual acquaintances, made sure everyone we'd ever known would see his version of events. And people believed him. Of course they did. He was well-spoken and successful, and a man, and I was just the difficult wife in the basement. The church shared his essay. Old friends commented with support. He became the wounded party, the one who'd tried so hard to make his marriage work despite having such a troubled spouse. I read that essay sitting in my new living room, and I felt the old familiar pull, the urge to defend myself, to prove my innocence, to make everyone understand the truth. But then something shifted in me. I realized I didn't care anymore. Let them believe him. Let them have his version of events. Let them think I was the villain. Because the people who mattered, the people who'd actually seen me, Miss Patricia and Sarah and Maria and Jean and Dorothy, they knew the truth. And more importantly, I knew the truth. The need for everyone to understand, the need to be validated by people who'd never bothered to see me anyway, it just dissolved. I put my phone down and went back to living my life. That was the final test, and I passed it by not taking it. 6 months after I left that basement apartment, I did something I never thought I'd do. I joined a gym. Not to lose weight, or to look younger, or to somehow earn back my worth. Just to feel strong. Just to remember my body was mine and it could do things besides serve other people. I started with water aerobics because it was low impact and I could hide in the pool if I felt self-conscious. But then I tried a yoga class, then a strength training class. Then I signed up for swimming lessons because I'd never learned how to swim. And at 45 years old, I decided there was no time like the present. My body changed. Not in the way magazines promised, but in real ways. My arms got stronger. My back straightened more. My breathing deepened. I stopped feeling like I was always bracing for impact and started feeling like I was taking up space on purpose. I got a new job too. Not just another job, but a career I'd been interested in before I got married. Event planning. I'd always been good at organizing things, at managing details, at making people feel taken care of. But instead of doing it for free for people who resented me, I started doing it professionally for people who paid me and appreciated my work. My first event was a small wedding, just 50 people, but I made it beautiful. The bride cried when she saw the setup. The groom thanked me 3 times, and I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Pride. Actual uncomplicated pride in something I'd created. I started saving money again. Real money, in accounts only I could access, with passwords only I knew. Every paycheck, I'd transfer a portion to savings, and I'd watch that number grow, and it felt like proof. Proof that I could build something, that I could take care of myself, that I didn't need anyone to rescue me because I could rescue myself. The senior community had a book club, and I joined that too. We read everything, classics and bestsellers, and weird experimental fiction. I hadn't read for pleasure in years. Every moment of my life had been dedicated to productivity, to usefulness, to making sure everyone else was comfortable. But sitting in a circle of women, talking about books, having opinions about characters and plots and themes, it felt subversive. It felt like freedom. I thought about that Porsche Cayenne in ocean blue sometimes. I still wasn't driving one, probably never would. But I'd bought myself a reliable used car, nothing fancy, and I'd named her Freedom, and sometimes I'd just drive. Not to anywhere specific, just drive through Memphis, through neighborhoods I'd never explored, past the river, into parts of the city I'd only heard about. I'd roll the windows down even in winter, just for a minute, just to feel the cold air on my face and remember I was alive. The rocking chair stayed with me, but I moved it to my bedroom. Sometimes at night, I'd sit in it before bed, and I'd rock back and forth, back and forth. But now I was rocking with gentleness, with compassion, with love for the woman I used to be and the woman I was becoming. The creaking didn't sound sad anymore. It sounded like a lullaby, like a prayer, like a promise that I'd survived. 1 year after I left, I went back to that quiet cul-de-sac. Not to the house. Just drove by. I wanted to see if I'd feel anything. Regret, maybe. Nostalgia. Fear. But when I turned onto that street where families had lived for generations, I felt nothing. It was just a street. The house was just a house. The basement apartment where I'd spent so many years was just a room, and whoever lived there now, I hoped they were happier than I'd been. I drove past Robert's mother's old house. There was a for sale sign in the yard. I drove past the church that had shunned me. The parking lot was full. I drove past it all, and then I drove back to my new life, and I felt light. Maria from the Domino's group asked me if I'd ever consider dating again. The thought terrified me, but I didn't say no. I just said, Maybe someday, when I'm ready, when I've remembered who I am outside of being someone's wife, someone's servant, someone's source of income. I started therapy too. A therapist named Dr. Reynolds who specialized in abuse recovery. She was the one who taught me the word gaslighting. She was the one who explained that trauma changes your brain chemistry, that what I'd experienced wasn't just sad, it was neurologically damaging. She was the one who told me recovery wasn't linear, that some days I'd feel strong and some days I'd feel broken, and both were okay. We worked through it all. The shame I felt about wasting 23 years, the guilt about breaking up the family, the fear that I'd never be able to trust anyone again, the anger that sat in my chest like a stone. We worked through it slowly, carefully, like archaeologists excavating a precious site, making sure not to damage anything more than it already had been. Dr. Reynolds asked me once what I wished I'd known earlier. I thought about it for a long time, and then I told her. I wish I'd known that manipulators use specific tactics, that what happened to me wasn't random bad luck or my personal failure, but a predictable pattern that experts have studied and documented. I started researching after that. I read everything I could find about emotional abuse, financial abuse, coercive control. I learned the terms: love bombing, triangulation, DARVO, reactive abuse, trauma bonding. I learned that what I'd thought was my personal weakness was actually a normal human response to calculated manipulation. I learned that abusers isolate their victims from support systems, that they create financial dependency, that they use intermittent reinforcement to keep you hoping things will get better, that they gaslight you into thinking you're the problem, that they recruit other people to participate in your abuse, creating a web of control that's almost impossible to escape alone. And I got angry all over again. Not at myself this time, but at the system that lets this happen, at the church that prioritized marriage over safety, at the community that shunned the victim instead of the abusers, at the police who aren't trained to recognize elder abuse even when it's happening right in front of them. I found out that only 16% of police officers receive adequate training on elder abuse. 16%. That means when someone like me finally gets the courage to call for help, there's an 84% chance the person who responds won't even know what they're looking at. I found out that research with teenagers shows 75% have experienced at least one trauma, and 20% have experienced 4 or more. That means most of us are walking around broken, trying to function in a world that expects us to be fine, to be productive, to just get over it. These statistics haunt me because every number represents a person. Every percentage point represents someone sitting in a basement apartment or a parked car or a locked bathroom, wondering if they're crazy, wondering if they deserve this, wondering if there's any way out. Now I'm here, a year and a half after leaving, and I want to tell you what I've learned. Not the pretty lessons about forgiveness and growth, but the real ones. The ones that might actually help you if you're living this right now. First, manipulators use specific tactics, and you need to know them. They separate you from your support system gradually, so gradually you don't notice until you're completely isolated. They make you feel responsible for their emotions and needs, like you're the only one who can help them, the only one who understands. They gaslight you into thinking you're the problem, that you're too sensitive, too dramatic, too demanding. They create financial dependency so you can't leave even when you want to. They make you feel ashamed of yourself, of your needs, of your very existence. And they recruit other people to reinforce these messages, creating a whole system of abuse that's bigger than just one person. Know these patterns. When you see them, get out. Don't wait like I did. Don't convince yourself it's not that bad. Don't believe them when they say they'll change. Don't sacrifice another day of your life hoping they'll finally see your worth. They won't. They can't. Because to them, you're not a person. You're a resource. Second, you will be blamed for leaving. That's guaranteed. The abuser will paint themselves as the victim. The community will probably believe them. The church will tell you to forgive. Your family will say you're breaking up the marriage. People who've never lived what you've lived will have very strong opinions about what you should do. Ignore them. All of them. Save yourself first. Worry about your reputation later. Or better yet, don't worry about it at all. Third, recovery is possible, but it's hard and it's slow, and nobody's going to give you a medal for doing it. You're going to have days where you feel strong and days where you can barely get out of bed. You're going to have moments of clarity and moments where you doubt everything. You're going to be angry and sad and scared and relieved all at the same time. That's normal. That's okay. That's part of healing. Fourth, find your people. Not the old people who enabled the abuse, but new people who see you. Support groups, therapy, communities designed for survivors. Find people who've lived it and came out the other side. Find people who won't judge you for taking 23 years to leave. Find people who understand that abuse doesn't always leave visible scars. And finally, you deserve better. You deserve to eat dinner in the living room. You deserve to sleep in a bed that's comfortable. You deserve friends who make you laugh. You deserve work that fulfills you. You deserve hobbies that bring you joy. You deserve to take up space without apologizing. You deserve to be seen and heard and valued, not for what you do for other people, but just for existing. I know that might sound simple or obvious, but when you've been told your whole life that your worth is tied to your usefulness, that message becomes radical, revolutionary even. I'm sitting on my balcony right now as I tell you this story. My new balcony, in my new apartment, in my new life. The winter is ending. Spring is starting to push through. The garden below has these tiny green shoots coming up, and I've been watching them every morning, watching them reach toward the sun, watching them break through the hard, cold ground. That's what recovery feels like a tiny green shoot that shouldn't survive, but does anyway. That keeps reaching even when the conditions are terrible. That breaks through even when everything is trying to keep it buried. I still have the soft pink bathrobe, worn thin at the elbows. I keep it in the back of my closet, not because I wear it, but because it reminds me where I came from. It reminds me that I survived. It reminds me that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible. I still use the old aluminum coffee pot. Some things are worth keeping, even if they're associated with hard times. The coffee tastes the same, but the experience of drinking it is completely different now. Now it's peaceful. Now it's mine. I still wear my cross necklace, though my relationship with faith has changed. I don't think God wants me to suffer anymore. I think maybe God wants me to be free, to be whole, to be happy. And if the church can't understand that, then maybe I need a different church. Or maybe I need to find God somewhere else entirely. In the garden below my balcony. In the laughter of my domino friends. In the sunrise I watch every morning. In the strength of my own hands. So I'm asking you this, and I need you to really think about it. Are you in a basement apartment right now, metaphorical or real? Are you sitting in a parked car, afraid to go inside? Are you wearing a bathrobe worn thin at the elbows, feeling worn thin yourself? Are you believing lies about how much you're needed while your needs go completely ignored? Have you given up your hobby, your friends, your dignity? Have you convinced yourself you're the strong one, the essential one, the one holding everything together, when really you're just the one being used? Have you sacrificed so much that you don't even remember who you were before? Are there people in your life who coordinate to keep you small, to keep you dependent, to keep you believing you need them more than they need you? Are you making excuses for people who've never once made an excuse for you? If any of this sounds familiar, I need you to know something. You're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not stupid. You're caught in a system designed to keep you trapped, and the only way out is through. Get help. Call a social worker, a lawyer, a therapist, anyone who can help you see what you've been too close to see. Document everything. Save evidence. Don't tell them you're planning to leave. Just leave. Get out and figure out the rest later. And if you know someone going through this, don't judge them for staying. Don't ask why they don't just leave. Don't minimize what they're experiencing. Just be there. Be the witness. Be the person who sees them when everyone else is looking away. The statistics I mentioned earlier about trauma in teenagers and inadequate training on elder abuse, they're not just numbers. They're proof that this problem is everywhere, that it's systemic, that it's not being addressed the way it needs to be. But they're also proof that we need to talk about this more. We need to break the silence. We need to stop pretending that abuse only happens to other people, in other families, in other neighborhoods. It's happening here, right now, in quiet cul-de-sacs where families have lived for generations, in churches and communities and homes that look perfect from the outside, behind closed doors and basement windows and polite smiles and Sunday morning services. And the only way to stop it is to shine light on it, to tell our stories, to refuse to be ashamed, to help each other escape and recover and rebuild. That's why I'm telling you all of this, not because I want attention or pity or validation, but because maybe someone needs to hear it. Maybe someone is sitting in their car right now, afraid to go inside, and they'll hear my story and realize they're not alone. Maybe that will be the thing that finally gives them permission to save themselves. You don't need permission, by the way. But I'm giving it to you anyway, just in case you're waiting for someone to say it. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to disappoint people who've never worried about disappointing you. You are allowed to break up the family, end the marriage, move away, start over. You are allowed to be free. I'm 45 years old, and I'm just now learning how to live. I'm just now figuring out who I am outside of being someone's wife, someone's servant, someone's bank account. And it's hard, and it's scary, and some days I still doubt everything. But I'm free. And that's worth more than anything I lost to get here. If this story helped you, if it made you think, if it gave you the courage to take even one small step toward freedom, please share it, like it, subscribe. Not for me, but for the next person who needs to hear it, for the person still sitting in their basement apartment, still rocking in that creaking chair, still believing the lies they've been told about their worth. We're out here. Those of us who escaped, who survived, who rebuilt. We're living proof that it's possible, that you can start over at 45 or 55 or 75, that it's never too late to choose yourself, that freedom is worth fighting for. And to anyone who's listening and thinking this could never happen to you, that you're too smart or too strong or too independent, please know that's what I thought too. Abuse doesn't discriminate. It doesn't only happen to weak people or broken people or people who somehow deserve it. It happens to anyone who has the misfortune of loving someone who knows how to exploit that love. So pay attention. Know the signs. Believe people when they tell you what they're experiencing. And if you see someone struggling, be the witness. Be the person who sees them. Be the Miss Patricia in someone's story. Because that's how we change this. One story at a time. One person at a time, one escape at a time, one rebuilding at a time. My name is not important. My story is not unique, but my freedom is mine, and yours can be too. Have you lived this? Do you know someone who has? Think about it, and if you do, don't be silent. Speak up, reach out, get help, give help, break the cycle. And please, if this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but so this message reaches someone who desperately needs to hear it. Someone sitting in a parked car right now, gathering courage. Someone in a basement apartment wondering if there's a way out. Someone wearing a bathrobe worn thin at the elbows, feeling worn thin themselves. Tell them they're not alone. Tell them recovery is possible. Tell them freedom is worth fighting for. Tell them their story doesn't have to end in that basement.